Okay, let's dive into personalization. You've probably heard me talk a few times in this course so far about the value of personalizing your message, meaning adjusting your template to the person that you're reaching out to, and maybe finding one or two things to point out or to compliment to show them that you're a real person reaching out and that you're more thoughtful in your approach. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. If you don't personalize your messages and if you send a templated message, it can still work, but this just makes it that much better. And also keep in mind that the more important the prospect is, meaning, the bigger the company or the higher they are up in the company, the harder it's going to be to get their attention. So if you can imagine like a CEO of a 200-person company, he's going to be way harder to reach and get his attention versus, a small business owner. So personalization is even extra important when you're reaching out to somebody that's a little bit harder to reach or a little bit more important. So this is how you can really break through the noise and get anyone's attention. So what we have here is a resource attached called the layers of personalization. And what I'm going to show you is, where you can look to actually find something to point out to personalize one of your messages. So you can use this doc as a framework, anytime you're writing a message to figure out, what you want to say about this person. It'll take a little bit of thinking at first, but soon enough, you'll just kind of have it as a habit as far as where to look or how to find something about somebody you can compliment on. So in the layers of personalization resource, you'll see that there are 4 different ways or 4 different layers that you can actually personalize a message. Now I'm going to run through all 4 of them. And basically, the higher up we go, from 1 to 4, the more valuable it is. So essentially, layer 1 and layer 2, it's great to use, but it's not going to be as valuable and it's not going to resonate as much as if we were at layer 3 or layer 4. So keep in mind that the higher up we go on the scale, that's where you're going to get the best information that's really going to catch someone's attention. So the first layer of personalization, the first place you can go to do your research, is by pointing out something about the person's industry. If you were to mention a competitor, or if you were to just talk about the industry in general, like maybe point out some industry news, some changes, some insights, that's a great way to kind of personalize a message. Now this is layer 1, so this isn't as effective as if you were to talk about some of the other layers I'm going to mention later. Because, talking about someone's industry is great. It shows that you know them. It shows that you can relate to them. But ultimately, you're not really speaking like directly to that person and to their business, which we'll cover in some of the further layers. But again, this is great. I would say if you can't find anything, about the company or about the person, then you can definitely just call out something about their industry. And ultimately, there's kind of 2 goals when you're personalizing a message. Goal number 1, the reason that we personalize messages is because it shows that, again, you're a human sending them a message one-to-one. And it's just more thoughtful. So it kind of, instantly checks off the box that like this is a real thing. And, they're not just another number on a list of thousands of emails, right? So that's number 1, is just to show them that, you're actually reaching out to them personally. But the second reason is you want to try to find something that you can call out in your research that ties to your actual product or your offer. So it's just a lot more relevant. So let's say that, in the industry example, one of the things you can use to personalize a message is something about their competitors. Let's say a new competitor just released a similar product to this company you're reaching out to, and you notice that when you're doing your research, and you provide marketing services. That would be a great way to pitch your marketing services because you're pointing out a problem, right? Hey, I saw this competitor of yours just released a really similar product to yours, and it seems like they're gaining a lot of traction. I'd love to help you with some new marketing ideas for your product so that you can, not lose market share to that competitor. So that's an example of what I mean by how when you're doing your research, try to find something that actually relates to your offer because it's just way smoother. Of course, like you can definitely point out something personal like, oh, we like the same football team, right? Or, oh my God, you have a really cute dog. That'll accomplish the first goal of showing them that you actually know them, but it's not really related to your offer. It's kind of just like random. So it's still better than nothing. But the best thing you can do is try to find an insight in your research that you can tie into your message because then it shows them like a lot of relevance to why you're reaching out. So yeah, layer 1 is the industry, pointing out something about the industry news, changes, insights. If you're researching their industry or if you already know their industry and there's a lot happening, like, maybe for a bigger company, there's some regulation changes or like something new that happened that would be relevant to how your product could help them. That's a great thing to call out in your research. But again, still this is layer 1. It's not going to be as effective as if we get more personal to the actual prospect you're reaching out to. So layer 2, if you're going up the scale, something that would be a little bit better is actually finding something about their specific company that you can call out in your message. So again, this is going to be more powerful than just saying something about the industry. So how can you research someone's company? Well, the good thing is we're living in the information age, so it's really easy to do some digging online and learn a lot about a company. Now, if you're reaching out to like a mid-sized company or a big enterprise, you're going to find so much more information online This gets a little bit trickier if you're reaching out to small businesses, which don't really have a lot of information online and on LinkedIn. They're not really like in the news much, and there's not always much on their website. So it is going to be a little bit harder when you're just reaching out to a small company, but there's still a lot of places you can look for gold. If you're trying to research a company and try to find something you can point out in your message, you can look at their content and their social media. Obviously, you can see what they're posting about is important to them. So let's say that they're posting a lot about a topic related to, the problem you solve or what your service is. That's a great thing to call out, right? Like, hey, I saw you guys posted about this last week. Sounds like this is an important area for your business. Would love to help you, right? So again, you're trying to find a way to tie it to what it is you're saying in your message. Another thing is if they're hiring or if there's job opportunities, which you can normally see on their website, but also if you go to a website like Glassdoor, you can see, if they have any open positions. And you can also see that on LinkedIn as well. So this is a great one. This is one that I've actually used in my business as well. So at Revenue Boost, we sell sales consulting. So if I see a company is like expanding their sales team and they're hiring for different sales roles, that's a great time for me to send them a message like, hey, I saw you guys are hiring for this role. A lot of times when you're building the sales team, things can get really messy. You have to change all your processes. So I'd love to help you with that transition. Obviously, you could think of something much better than that, but just trying to show you an idea of how you can just take something that you find in your research and tie that into what your hook is. So hiring job opportunities is a great thing because the other thing too is, if someone's hiring for a certain role, like if you sell some sort of marketing service or marketing consulting service, just as an example, and you see a company has hiring like tons of different roles for marketing department, then you know that they're obviously investing a lot in that department and they're really trying to push it. So it's going to be a great time for you to slide in and see how you can help. Also with the fact that they're going through a lot of changes, right? So hiring job opportunities is a great one. You can tell, what they're putting money into, what's important to them, what they're focused on. Another one would be announcements on their website. So a great example is, when a company raises money or venture capital, they'll always put a banner up on their website and say that. But anything else as well, just see like what's happening with their company and, what they're announcing. That's obviously something that's really important to them. If they're announcing any news on their website, then that that's a huge area of focus for them. And if what they're announcing is relevant to your product or service or the problem you solve, then that's going to be a great way to get a message that really sticks through. Also, if they've released any new products or services, that could be something that you could call out, something that might be relevant to what you're doing. You could also check their social proof, so their testimonials, their case studies, any recent client work. It could be a great way to complement something. Let's say that you sell some kind of digital marketing service like SEO or like content writing, and you see that a company doesn't have a lot of website traffic, but they have really, really great reviews. They have tons of happy customers. That's a great problem to call out, right? You can tie that into your pitch by saying something like, hey, I see you guys do absolutely amazing work for your customers, but it's really not getting out there because you guys, aren't ranking in the search for these results or whatever you would say. I'd love to help you with that, right? So see how, a personalized message is going to be so much more relevant and useful versus just kind of a generic blanketed message. If a company puts up a case study or a testimony on their website, they're really bragging and they're really proud of, their services and what they do for their customers. So that's a great thing to point out and even just compliment, even if it's not relevant to what you're actually offering them. If you check out their values or their mission, maybe you find something in there. Maybe you look at their company values that relates to what you do. Like let's say one of their company values was, had something to do with profitability or like efficiency, and you sold some kind of operations consulting service, then just as an example, you can tie that in, right? So if you look at a company's mission statement or values, which again, most small businesses don't have, but bigger companies will, you can see what's important to them, what they're all about. And if any of that is relevant to what you're offering, then that's great, right? And then just in general, looking over their website or their social media, just see anything that you like, anything that stands out to you that you think would be great to compliment on. And the best thing you can do here is be genuine, right? If you actually find something about their company that you really relate to or you really like or really has a lot to do with what you're offering, then that's going to be the best thing, right? Because if you're just super fake about it, then people can usually tell. So don't just do it just to do it, right? Try to actually find something useful. And another one would be finances too. So a lot of people do this, but it is helpful. Bigger companies, they would post their finances, but also, kind of like I mentioned earlier, funding rounds. So if a company has raised money, that's going to be something that would work for a lot of different offers because no matter what you're selling, let's say you're selling creative services or marketing services or like web design, no matter what you're selling, if a company just raised a lot of capital, they're definitely trying to invest in growing the business. So you could definitely tie that into what you're offering. Like, hey, I saw that you guys just raised funds. Congrats, sounds like you guys are going to have a big year ahead of you. I'm not sure if you're trying to invest in the SEO or the organic traffic, but that's actually how we help companies like yours, yada, yada, yada. Hope you get the point by now. Again, try to find something in your research that can actually stick out to the person and be relevant to what you're offering. So again, when you look at their website or their social media, you can find loads about the company. Now, the third layer of personalization, if we're going up the scale, and this is even more effective, is personalizing a message based on any interaction or inbound. So if somebody at that company had engaged with your content, or they viewed your profile, which LinkedIn would tell you who views your profile, or if they like downloaded something from your website, then that's a great thing to call out in your message. So if somebody, commented on a bunch of your posts, then you could call that out, and obviously they have some kind of interest in your company if they're liking and following or commenting on some of your content. So that's a great reason to reach out as well, because then you can just find out why were they interested, or what brought them to your profile in the first place. Okay, so we covered how you can comment on something about the industry, you can find something about their company, you can call out something based on any interaction with them if there was any. Now the fourth layer, which is the most valuable, is actually speaking to that person directly, finding something personal about that person that you can reference in your message. Because obviously, if you were to say something about someone's company that's relevant to your offering, then that's great. But people are going to care more about themselves and their own job title and their own agenda versus, the business as a whole, right? So how can you find information about a person? Well, look at their content, right? Again, a lot of small business owners might not always be posting content. Some will, some won't. But generally, when you go up to bigger companies, a lot of people are pretty active on LinkedIn. So look at their content. Again, whatever someone's posting a lot about tells you what they care about, what they want to talk about. So if you can reference something there, then that's great. So if somebody's posting about the same topic a lot, then you can tell that they really care about it. And if somebody has a lot of content, you can definitely dig and find something that's actually relevant to what you're offering, right? So here's an example for my own business. I reached out to this YouTuber a while ago that I wanted to get in front of his audience. And my goal was to actually do basically a webinar to his audience. And what I did was I looked at all his content, and I saw that he had very few videos about generating leads, but I saw that he had a lot of videos about sales training. So he was teaching his audience a lot about sales and closing deals, but he wasn't teaching his audience about generating leads in the first place. So in my message, I said, hey, I noticed that you obviously care about educating your audience about sales. It sounds like that content does really well, but I didn't see any videos around this topic. So see how we're pointing out a problem? And then related to my offer, I said, I'd love to do a video together. I think this would be super valuable for your audience. And of course he said yes, and that video got like 40,000 views. So if I didn't personalize that message, I guarantee it wouldn't have worked, because he has a really big channel, a few million subscribers. And he probably gets hit up like all the time. So personalization definitely helps you break through the noise. So again, if you're trying to find something about the person, just look at their content if they have any. And also not even content they produce, but content they consume. Maybe you find that this person you want to reach out to is part of one of the same groups as you, or maybe you see that like they follow the same influencer. That's a great common ground that you could point out, and that's kind of just a way to build a connection, right? You're talking about a shared interest. And then, on their LinkedIn, you can usually find like if they have any really cool achievements that you can compliment. You can look at their experience. You can look at where they're from or their schooling as well, but unless you're like from that same area, then there's not really going to be much to say there. But yeah, who knows? Maybe you actually went to the same school as them, or you've been to their city or something before, and that's something you could say as well. But best would be like what they're posting about, if they actually are active on social media, because now you know what's on their mind and what they care about and what their interests are as well. So yeah, through that, if you can find anything that you both have in common, that's great, because we always like talking to people that we have something in common with, right? Okay, so those are the 4 layers of personalization. Those are the 4 different ways that you can personalize a message, and the 4 things you can kind of look for in your research. As far as sources of information, like where to go to find this stuff, you can definitely look at their social profiles. LinkedIn is definitely a gold mine. You can look at their personal profile on LinkedIn, and if they have one, you can look at their company profile as well to see what they post. But of course, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever else they have, that's fine too. But LinkedIn is definitely going to be the best, because you'll find a lot of stuff specific to their business, because LinkedIn is a business platform. Website is great as well. The website can tell you a lot about the company. Also, sometimes they might have like an about page or like a team page, and then you could also find more about the actual person and what they're all about. And then other than that, you just Google search. You can Google search the prospect's name and see what comes up. You can click on the news tab on Google to see if they've been mentioned in the news. That's a great thing to also point out. Google their company name, Google the industry to find some insights. Even, Google their competitors if you're trying to go that angle as well. So obviously there's a lot to do. The best tip I would give you about doing this research is to not go down a rabbit hole, because you could definitely spend hours on like one person and eventually find out like what all of their dogs are named, but you don't need that information. So if it helps, maybe keep like a timer up on your laptop. If it's a really good opportunity, like a really great client, maybe it's worth spending a little bit more time. Like I said, that video that I did with that influencer that got tons of views, that was worth me spending the time to do some research on him. So, if it's a really good opportunity, it could be worth spending 20, 30 minutes to do the research. But generally, sales is a numbers game, right? You got to really move on and try to take many shots. So normally just try to keep it under 5 minutes. Just try to find one or two things that you can point out. Really, one is enough. So it might take you a little bit longer in the beginning. It might be a little bit slower to kind of get the hang of this. But soon enough, once you get familiar with the platforms and how to use social media, how to use Google to find information, then it'll be pretty quick and you'll be able to kind of find one nugget of research that you can use fairly quick. So don't worry if it takes you a little bit longer in the beginning, but just remember, you don't want this to take, all day, because you also got to do all the other stuff in the process. So I hope that's helpful. Your homework for this section would be to find 3 companies from your actual list of prospects that you created in one of the earlier lessons, and try to find, one thing that you can say about each person that's relevant to your offering. So again, find 3 prospects from your list that you made earlier, and research their website, research their social media, research their industry, and just try to find at least one thing that you can say if you were to actually write an outreach message to them. All right, I hope you have fun with the exercise, and I'll see you in the next lesson.